brawl.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be recognized for a
You
minute.
may.
I think it'd be a good idea, just as a matter of decorum, to give all the aldermen a brief moment opportunity to get to their seats. You know, they have to visit with constituents and others. We're all cognizant of the time that the meeting starts, but I think we just about a few seconds past starting time. Of course, I was in my seat, but I think in deference to my esteemed colleagues, we need to be given the opportunity to be seated as opposed to be hearing the hard sound of a gavel. We understand the meeting starts at 5:30. Of course, it doesn't apply to me, but three of my distinguished colleagues were getting to their seats. So hopefully, at the next meeting, we'll give a few seconds grace time for them to get to their seats. Because I hate for them to have to hear that hard sound. We got enough to deal with at these meetings without a gavel just pounding in our ears. So I just wanted to say that as a matter of decorum that needs to be said. Thank you very much.
All right, you have before you a copy of the modified written agenda. Are there any proposed revisions to the agenda as written?
I've got a few. Under board business, I'd like to move item A to consent, striking and a cash donation so that it is consent of only the in-kind services.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to move item 10A, the approval of the special event permit for the Starkville Community Day scheduled for Saturday, July 21st, 2012 at J.L. King Park, requesting street services and in-kind services on the consent agenda as presented, striking the cash donation of $2,500 that appeared in the original packet. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It's correct.
Do I hear any objection to placing that matter as revised on the consent agenda? Any objection? Any?
I just want to be sure that we're clear about the streets that are to be closed and times that they're to be closed. Is that,
That's as presented in the packet.
okay.
And the only thing that's changed in the packet is the cash donation is stricken.
I didn't see the street names or the times, but I may have overlooked it.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Saying none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Davis, do you have further proposed revisions?
On the modified agenda, item E was stricken from the consent, but I'd like that to go back on, and I'd like to add the language at the end of that, scheduled so that any dollars over the restricted fund amount that's currently shown on the board packet comes from the fiscal year 13 budget.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 10E, revising the 2011, or revision to the 2011 capital improvement program to include an overlay of Crite Street from Jackson Street to Old West Point Road instead of the Central Avenue rebuild project as presented, with the following language added and placed on the consent agenda. Any dollars expended over I wrote restricted amount. Is that the way you phrased
The
it?
restricted fund amount, there's, that fund is,
All right, any dollars expended over the restricted fund amount as indicated will come from the FY 2013 budget.
that's right.
All right, and the proposal is to place that as revised on the consent agenda. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Further proposed revision.
Item G, I'd like to add that to consent, but I'd like to strike from ending fund balance, and I'd like that to read the same as item E. But I would like to ask the city engineer to clarify the ability of us overlaying that project in 2012 with the funds being, or either Ms. Sistrunk, you can help here.
I think it's just a question of, can you schedule it? Can you start the process and schedule it so that the work occurs at the beginning of fiscal year 13, which is October 1st, for Utah Street and to finish Kreitz and to finish Kreitz after October 1st. I think that one could probably,
It would probably make sense to do Christ in its entirety at one time.
okay.
But typically, October is still
Good month.
a good month for doing overlay type work.
Okay.
Of course, it is weather dependent, but typically in the past, you can pave all the way up through December.
Okay.
And if you do the project in September, most of it would bill in October. Right.
Okay.
So that would give you September and October.
All right, well then, strike ending fund balance from the end of that and add coming from the FY13 budget.
All right. Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to both revise item 10G and place it on the consent agenda. Item 10G would go to the consent agenda as the adding of Utah Street to the 2012 overlay project list with the funds of $34,573 coming from the FY 2013 budget instead of from ending fund balance as it was written. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision? It would be otherwise as presented.
Correct.
Alderman Dumas, that's Alderman Dumas's proposed revision. Do I hear any objection? Any objection?
I got a question. Why are we getting in the habit of doing that? Why are we jumping ahead of you?
Alderman Dumas?
Well, this would be built this year, so as we look at our project list this year, it would go ahead and be triggered. It would just be one of the ending, or one of the last ones overlaid this year.
But not from this
on that
year's
project
money.
list,
No.
but it would be from next year's budget.
So why are we getting in the habit of doing this?
I wouldn't say there's a habit. This
That's
is
the second
probably
time.
the one time that this has been done. The one above, this is a two-year, Kreitz is a two-year project that has purposely been, well, Central was pulled off the list last year, probably one of the worst roads in town. Kreitz, I'm moving that to Kreitz because of the abuse it's gotten over the last couple of years. Those funds are in there, so we have $101,000 in there. Unfortunately, we're $30,000 short. So I think Ms. Sistrunk will talk about our ending fund balance here shortly so that we understand where we are currently with that. But these are both pressing needs that don't need to go on to the ending fund amount. They need to be considered in next year's
And
funding
we-
cycle.
I think sometimes people confuse fiscal years and calendar years, and a fiscal year starts over each October 1st, so you can time your work so that it occurs in the next fiscal year, but in this calendar year. And I think that's all that Alderman Dumas is trying to do, is time the work so that it occurs in this calendar year, but in the next fiscal year.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, you have further proposed revisions.
I do, and I guess, Chris, to ask you about the contract with Telepac, since this is a newly added item, have you had time to look at this contract and you good with it?
I have. Lynn provided it to me yesterday, and I reviewed it, and it's okay to approve or
Okay.
act on.
Well, I'd like to add item H under board business to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 10H, the approval of a franchise contract with Telepac for the use of city rights-of-way as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, you have further proposed revisions.
Under personnel, I'd like to add item 1 to consent.
All right. Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11I1, the approval of the promotion of Justin Edwards to the position of sergeant in the fire department as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
Under personnel, under item 7, but I want to clarify on the consent item, are these for 2 positions, Chief Lindley?
Actually,
3? So I'd like to place item 7, with that being for 3 vacant officer positions to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11I7, the approval to advertise for 3 vacant police officer positions as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
I have some questions about the foreman aspect of number 3 and 4 with the sanitation department, and since Ms. Boyd is not here, I'd like to remove those items from the agenda.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place, to remove items 11I3 and 11I4 from the agenda. Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, those 2 matters have been removed from the agenda.
And then finally, I'd like to place the minutes on the consent.
All right. Alderman Dumas has proposed revising. Oh, I'm in the wrong place. Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 4A, the approval of the minutes from the recess meeting of the Starkville Board of Alderman on March 20th, 2012, as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, that's your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Are there any further proposed revisions? Alderman Sistrunk?
I'd like to take 2 items off the consent agenda. Under personnel, items I5 and I6.
Alderman Sistrunk has proposed revising the agenda, or has not proposed. Alderman
Well,
Sistrunk has removed.
Actually, if I could speak a little bit about this, I might revise and add to leave it on the consent agenda, but these are permanent positions that are being advertised in the city clerk's office, and we're in the process of having to replace our city clerk, and we're gonna miss you, Ms. Outlaw. I think that, given that there are 2 people out of 5 positions in that office, with the idea that there will be a new department head in the next few months, hopefully sooner than that, that person should have the opportunity to fill those positions. I do acknowledge that there's a need for help in Ms. Outlaw's office, and she already has 1 temporary position in there, and I'd like to authorize extending that position, which will trigger benefits for that position because it will go past 120 days, and then authorizing a temporary position. So can we, rather than say to advertise to fill the vacant positions, can we say advertise for temporary position?
All right, so you wouldn't need to advertise in the case of one of the clerks. Which clerk is currently filled by a temporary employee?
We have a receivables that's,
Okay, so 5 is filled by a temporary employee currently, yeah.
So that one
That would be for an extension.
including benefits.
And the second would be to change it to a temporary. Do you want to put any specifications on the temporary employee?
Let's say 120 days without benefits, and we'll extend it if need be.
All right. Give me a second to organize this. So the proposed revision from Alderman Sistrunk would be to revise, let's take them one at a time. Item 11I5, leaving it on the consent agenda, and the revision would be the approval of extending the temporary employment, what's the clerk's name? The temporary employment of LaTanya Henderson as a deputy clerk, accounts receivable, and the extension would include provision of city benefits. All right. That's Alderman Sistrunk's proposed revision. Is there any objection to that proposed revision?
I got a question.
Okay.
Ms. Allo, since you leaving that office and you know what's in there,
what you think about the change? What you think was best for the city of Starkville?
Well, because it's gonna be now 3 positions without a permanent person, it's gonna be difficult. Because when you have someone on a temporary assignment, they are still looking for a full-time permanent job. If she finds one, then that's training that we'll just have to start over. So it's just pretty much, it's just really what the board decides to do with it. Both positions are needed, and as Ms. Sistrunk says, it's the work there. If you bring somebody in temporary, it's gonna get it done, but if they find something, then we're looking at, starting back with training again.
Where is that putting the city? Where is that putting the city?
That's just gonna make the office not as effective as it could be.
Do we have any objection?
I object.
All right, so that matter will not be revised and placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Sistrunk, do you now wish to take
I
those
think
matters
there's no
off
point.
of the
Take
consent?
both those off the
All right,
consent
Alderman
agenda.
Sistrunk is removing items 11I5 and 11I6 from the consent agenda, so those will be on the regular discussion portion of the agenda. All right, do we have any further proposed revisions?
I've got one other. On Mayor's Business Item A, I'm good with this staying on consent, but in terms of the ordinance, and I've mentioned this to Ms. Sproul, and just for the minutes, the sake of the minutes, I want to strike any reference in the Code of Ordinances, or in the actual ordinance itself, that's made to the 2012 edition of the International Energy Conservation Code.
Okay, so for the ordinance that is proposed and discussed in the public hearing next board meeting, any reference to the NEC code will be stricken. Is that your request?
Right. IECC, the International Energy Conservation Code.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so Ms. Sproul, in preparing that document, those references
She
will
just
be
stepped
deleted.
down. She heard that earlier.
Okay. Alderman Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the recognition. Item number F on engineering streets, number 1. Mr. Mayor, I am in favor of that staying on the consent agenda, but I would like to delete that last paragraph, and that is outside the context of the board's prior order. I think that just came from the staff for some reason, but it's the paragraph that begins with due to the relatively, and we understand that, what has to take place, we're going to do all the Greta, and then Ms. Sproul stepped out, we're going to do a certain section or something of Collier, but we just want to keep that there, and the staff had really changed the scope of our board order. So I
right.
want to approve that consent with the deletion in its entirety of the paragraph that was inserted by the staff.
The proposal from Alderman Perkins is to leave item 11F1 on the consent agenda, but remove the final paragraph as presented in the packet, which begins with the sentence, due to the relatively small quantities and somewhat specialized construction process.
Yes, sir.
All right, any objection to that revision? Any objection, any objection, any objection? Seeing none, that remains on consent with that paragraph stricken from the packet. Alderman Perkins, do you have further proposed revisions?
I think that's it, Mr. Mayor.
All right, are there any further proposed revisions from the members of the board? Alderman Carver.
First of all, I apologize for being late. On the 2 public hearings, are they still on the regular agenda?
They
To
are.
be discussed? And, okay, that's fine, thank you.
Any further proposed revisions? Do we have any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. You now have before you the modified consent agenda. Is there any objection to the approval of the modified consent agenda? Any objection, any objection, any objection? Seeing none, the modified consent agenda has been approved, and the minutes were placed on consent, so that will take us to comments by the mayor and board. And I have a few unscheduled comments this evening, but they won't take long. First, I just want to say a brief farewell to our city clerk. We're going to be having an official event later next month, but the city clerk is one position in city government that I work very, very closely with. And most of you probably read in the newspaper over the weekend, Ms. Outlaw, who has served this city for, I guess, a little over a quarter of a century in all, has decided to leave us. And I must admit, I'm very sad about that. But Ms. Outlaw, I just wanted to thank you so much and tell you what a pleasure it's been working with you, and just let you all know how lucky I feel we at the city of Starkville have been to have what I believe is one of the very finest city clerks in all of the state of Mississippi. I would now like to recognize Terry Kemp. Is Terry here?
Actually, he had to attend a funeral. He thought he'd be back, so maybe he'll
Well, y'all tell Terry congratulations when you see him. There he is.
Speak of the devil.
Terry has just been named to the TV PPA board, which, Terry, is that the Distributors Association within TVA?
It is the distributor organization that covers the valley. That's
Yeah.
on TVA distributors.
And over 150 distributors?
155.
Yeah. So this is a very high honor and bodes well for the city of Starkville and the management we have for our electric department. Congratulations. Finally, a reminder to the members of the board. I had to remind myself about this afternoon. I was actually a day late. We have our department head evaluations. And since Ms. Outlaw is leaving us, and she was scheduled to be in the first round of evaluation, you'll have 3 evaluations now. Those are Spruill, Randy Boyd, and Clement. They were due yesterday, but I will admit I did mine this afternoon, so I was late as well. Please get those to us by the end of the day tomorrow so that Randy can begin to compile them. All right, and those are all the comments I have tonight. We have one scheduled board comment, and that is the presentation of the Employee of the Month by Alderman Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. The Employee of the Month for May 2012 for the City of Starkville is Keith Fortenberry for our wastewater treatment plant. Keith Fortenberry is the Employee of the Month for May 2012. Keith is the Operator 4 for the wastewater treatment plant and has been with the city since July of 2009. When Keith began work at the wastewater plant, he had pump and hazardous waste experience, but no wastewater experience. Since his hiring, Keith has obtained his Class 4 wastewater license, the highest level offered, in a year and a half. He has attended classes and completed correspondence classes on his own time. Completing his educational requirements and passing both the Class 2 and the Class 4 examinations in this short amount of time is a testament to his desire to excel at his job. Keith has gained a greater understanding of the workings of the wastewater plant, and in doing so, he has saved the city money and also wear and tear on equipment. Keith has become a valuable member of the wastewater treatment plant team and has contributed greatly in the training of new team members. He is always willing to help others gain a broader understanding of the workings of the department and the regulatory requirements of wastewater operations. Please join me in recognizing Keith Fortenberry as the City of Starkville's Employee of the Month for May 2012.
Do we have any further comments this evening by the
I've
members of
got,
the board?
I've got
Alderman
one
Doomer.
comment. There were some little placards outside on the table when you walked in by the agenda, and I just want to remind everybody that on May 11th this year at the GSDP lobby and on Lafayette Street, starting at 4 o'clock, we will be celebrating the 175th birthday of the City of Starkville. So anyone who's wishing to attend, please do so. There should be plenty outside, so if there's some more left over, take them to wherever you'd like, but it should be a fun event, so thank you.
Any further comments by the members of the board? Alderman Cicero.
Okay, I wanted to remind, these comments are actually to my fellow board members, but I wanted to remind y'all that with the very hard work of our department heads, we have improved our city's financial position over the last couple of years. We have not been as diligent this year, perhaps, about watching our expenditures as we have been in the past. Part of that is probably due to the fact that we budgeted less this year for contingency funds than we have in the past. But just so that each of you are aware, as we're finishing out this fiscal year, we have pretty much obligated all of the contingency funds that were budgeted. There's only a few $1,000s left there. We are bit by bit starting to look to our ending fund balance, and if we are not careful, we potentially find ourselves in the same position or even a worse position than we were when we came onto the board. So just a plea that we be very cognizant of how we are spending city dollars, and I think that part of what happened tonight with Kreitz and Utah is a reflection of that desire to make sure that we maintain that financial position that we've worked hard to be in, and to time our expenses so that we continue the position that we find ourselves in.
Any further comments by the members of the board? Any further comments? Any further comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. At this time, any citizen wishing to make comments may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. We would like to recognize the Vice Mayor, Sid Trump. We'd like to recognize Alderman Vaughn, Alderman Perkins, and City Clerk Makita.
Thank you, Alvin.
Mr. Turner.
The city of Starkville is very upset. But I've been a Baptist all my life, and Baptist people get real quick. But we will hold whoever comes on. We will hold them very close, feet to the fire. The citizens would like to thank all of the department heads for everything that you do to keep us safe and keep us up on our safety and our well-being. The Starkville Housing Department would like for the people to kind of slow down with school getting out to the 20-mile zone that straight through by my house. Sometimes they come through real quick. We don't want a kid to get hit. And if the emergency vehicle have to come, let us see your siren so that we can be alert that you're on the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments tonight? Any further citizen comments?
Mr. Mayor and members of the Board of Alderman, the reason I'm here tonight is I saw the news item in the Starkville Daily News about the proposed amendments for sidewalk and bicycling. And my first reading of that is, it sounds like it's a positive development because I'd like to encourage bicycling and walking in Starkville, and I'm looking forward to learning more about what the amendment plans are. Thank you.
Do we have any further citizen comments tonight? And just a reminder to everybody, we do have public hearings scheduled for both the bicycle helmet ordinance revision and the sidewalk ordinance.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Board. My name is Chris Taylor, and I'd like more support from the police on Long Street to slow down the speeders. They think it's a raceway. If there's any way we can see in the future putting speed brakes, I would like that.
Okay. All right. We'll have the city engineer and the chief of police look at it.
Mr. Mayor, we going out Friday.
Okay.
City and I going out Friday.
Excellent. Well, your alderman, the chief of police, and the city engineer will be there Friday.
Well, I know the chief.
Do we have any further citizen comments?
Good evening to the Board of Alderman, also to the mayor, and also to my alderman Perkins. I would just like to say, as I stand here today, sad case to see Marquita Outlaw being gone, but I would just like to thank you for being an icon for the city and doing what you did, standing up like you did and doing everything, answering questions even on Sundays when I would call you. I really appreciate that, and you know, anybody else I'll call whenever, you know, I have a problem, but I would like to thank you for doing that. And I would also just like to say, we do have quite a bit of speed breakers, loud music. We got a bunch of loud music, and that's over in the Rolling Field subdivision. You know, we have people that come through, and when they come through a little loud, you know, and we want to sort of take that down because sometimes the windows be shattered, you know, when they come through. And also, we had the street department, I think, to take the branches off of some of the wires. I would like to thank them, but next time, I want them to remember that we got a right-of-way trying to go out. We almost had about 3 accidents the other day. You know, just remember to move the trash back a little. But thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Isaac. Do we have any further citizen comments tonight? Any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, that will take us to public appearances, and we have one public appearance scheduled tonight by Anita Lindsay. And Ms. Lindsay, since your event has been approved, you will be informing us about the event that you're going to have now rather than asking about it, I suppose.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening. Good evening.
Since the event has been approved, I'm asking if you could blockage both entries coming from east and west, Henderson Street and Long Street.
And that was Alderman Sistrun's question. Did we get that in the packet? Let's take the opportunity now to make sure.
Ms. Lindsay, excuse me, may I recognize?
You may.
Make sure we clearly understand which street, exactly what you want us to close.
Henderson Street and Long Street, with east and west, coming from the east and west. You leave north and south open for the traffic come through so they can park the car. But to my understanding, I got clear when I spoke to someone, he said east and west will be blocked off of, like on Henderson Hill, and coming from the west side, the entrance.
I know what you're talking about.
With the four-way stop, yeah, four-way stop.
Four-way stop.
Okay. What time are you asking for it to be closed?
9 a.m. The event start at 9 a.m. July 21st
And how long you want it to be closed?
to 12 a.m. July 22nd.
From 9 a.m. that morning to midnight?
Chief, what about that?
We can do it. We've had some pretty big events in the park. We've never had to shut that street. We've had fun day in the park, we've had football games and other things, and, I mean, we can sure do it, but we've never done it before. So we've never done it. But now, this may be a big enough event that we have to.
What about the time? Time okay?
It says here 10, I think 10 to 12. Is that right? Page 4. Was that what you were requesting, or did you say 9 to 12?
9 to 12.
All right, and I don't see anything in the packet that clearly speaks to streets being closed, so.
I see it.
You do see it?
No, I was talking.
So if y'all want the streets closed, we probably need to amend that.
We need to amend that to close those.
All right, I have a motion from Alderman Vaughn to amend item 10A, previously placed on the consent agenda, to include closure of which streets from where?
For Henderson Street and Long Street.
To include closure of Henderson, no, from where to where on Henderson?
West Side Drive.
Yeah.
Across
That's what it
Long,
is.
you're gonna block it long. You're gonna block
Okay, they Henderson.
Okay, so West Side Drive from Long to Henderson.
You go straight.
All right, is that the only street?
Yes, sir.
All right, so the motion from Alderman Vaughn is to amend item 10A, as it was placed on the consent agenda, to include the closure of West Side Drive from Long Street to Henderson Street from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on the day of the event. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Vaughn, you wish to speak on the matters?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. All right, Ms. Lindsay, you
Okay,
start the floor.
also, please consider making this an annual event. It would be a great way for the community to unite, and there's a lot of people in the community we don't know. And this event would give us a chance to meet and greet some of the people who just moved to the area, Starkville area. And also, it's also a great event to promote the family gathering without crime and violence.
Do we have any questions or comments from the members of the board for Ms. Lindsay? Any questions or comments from the members of the board for Ms. Lindsay?
I want to
Alderman Vaughn.
thank you so much for trying to, this is your second year trying to get this started. And I'm hoping that we have a great success getting it started, like a lot of other communities and a lot of other towns does. And I hope, because I go to the Artesia Festival every year, and it's great. I go to the 7th Avenue Festival in Columbus. It's so crowded. And I'm just hoping that we can get this started and, like she said, bring unity to the city of Starkville.
Any further questions or comments for Ms. Lindsay?
Not only bring unity, bring some revenue.
Any further questions or comments for Ms. Lindsay?
Let me say something. Ms. Lindsay, I know you've been told this by City Planner Ben Griffith, but just let me make sure it's on your radar. The city will need that proof of insurance, and I know you can't bring it tonight because we're beyond 30 days out, but just keep that ever present in your mind that as soon as you can get that to Mr. Griffith.
I sure will.
Okay.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Lindsay.
Thank you.
And that will conclude our public appearances this evening. We have 2 public hearings scheduled. Our first public hearing is the first public hearing on the sidewalk ordinance, 2011-01. Alderman Dumas, would you like to introduce?
I will. There are just a few changes that I'm bringing forward, and obviously we've talked significantly about this ordinance over the past several years, and I just want to point these changes out before we get into these public hearings. Under definitions on page 2, I've added a definition for what we're calling the City of Starkville Sidewalk Development Area. This is any part of the City of Starkville, Mississippi located within the designated sidewalk development area as shown in the City of Starkville Sidewalk Development Plan. You've got a copy of this plan, and we're about to talk about it here. That will be a supplement to this ordinance. The development area includes all parcels within the shown boundary of the map and shall include all parcels up to and adjacent to the roads within the boundary, except where, and may have to clarify some of that language. Parcels within the primary frontage being on the highway development corridor shall only be required to construct sidewalks if they meet the criteria set forth in section 3.1. And for the purpose of this going forward, I would like to strike that highway development corridor sentence from the definition.
What page are you on?
Page 2 of 9, under definitions.
Ms. Spruill, do you have that for the next meeting?
Okay. Yep. All right, so that sets forth the definition. And under, on page 4, under section 3.1, this is, other than a few other little clarifications, this is really the meat of the ordinance, the change. Sidewalks are required within all new subdivisions. Now, this is speaking about subdivisions specifically. However, those subdivisions occurring outside of the City of Starkville sidewalk development area, so other than that area designated in blue, I assume that's blue. I'm colorblind, so if it's purple or blue. Is it purple? Purple. Sorry. The shade that's not yellow. Are required to only provide internal sidewalks and not connections to adjacent properties with no sidewalks. So in other words, if a significant residential development occurred in the northwest quadrant of the City of Starkville, that subdivision would be required to build internal sidewalks linking home to home along the roads, those types of things, but it would not be required outside of the development area to link to along the frontage road, etc. Now, I do add in there, only in the event that there exists a sidewalk adjacent to it. So if you look at Pine Lake, for example, well, that's in the sidewalk area. So there may be some examples of an adjacent sidewalk that's already built that would require a connection outside of the subdivision. The other development that is added is on page 6, and this comes from the direction of Alderman Perkins, that we specify on 4.8 that a specific exemption is for the City of Starkville Industrial Park area bounded by Industrial Park Road, which includes Pollard Road, Miley Road, and Airport Road. And those, and for the purpose of this, I would like to strike and Spruill Industrial Road, and I'll talk about that on the map. So again, nothing in the ordinance changed significantly. Nothing changed at all for those areas included in the purple area. And what we did, and what I tried to do with this, was link this directly to the mass transit system study that was just submitted to MDOT that we are getting some very favorable language on. And so there are 3 routes with the sidewalk or the mass transit system. One comes off of campus, goes into downtown. One leaves downtown and is a community connector, and it goes down Spruill or Lynn, goes down Lynn over to Industrial Park, up over and around Stark Road up to the hospital, etc. So it's a circular route that basically circumnavigates the city in this fashion. Then the other one is a Sportsplex park and ride that leaves the university and will provide access for all the residential units along Lynn and Academy Crossing, those areas. And so there was a lot of work that went into the development of that, one of which was density. So where are the densest populations, where are the people that are more than likely willing to and more apt to ride a public transit system. And as you can see, these parcel lines, you can begin to pick up the densest area of towns right off the bat. Another was, where are the schools, where are your civic functions, your public service functions, the other type of amenities that we know people need access to. Obviously a big one is healthcare, so it's in this area. You have retail and shopping areas. People have to go to the grocery store, they have to go to Walmart, have to go to pharmacies, which are up and down Highway 12. Another key significant one, Emerson School is in this area. So we wanted to connect Emerson School with the public transit system, but we couldn't because of no adjacency and density. So the shuttle system will break off in this point, but we wanted there to be access in the future for sidewalk development all the way down to Emerson School. So this is Emerson School, so that's why this follows down to down Old 25 to Emerson School. Another one, a big one that will be served by the shuttle system is Ability Works, which is in this area here on Industrial Park Road. And so we wanted to focus sidewalk development on the east side of Industrial Park Road and not the west side. And so in this case, what we can do with this is also pick up Ability Works, but the Medicaid office is also in this area of the town. I'm sorry. Anybody got a steady hand? Here, I'll try to use 2. And so that's the reason that these are significant in this point. Medicaid, Ability Works, and then obviously this is the Sportsplex, which will serve as one of the primary hubs for the park and ride facility for the university. In this area, what we see is we see significant student development. And another criteria that we looked at was looking at Highway 25, Highway 82, and Highway 12. These are significant barriers from a pedestrian standpoint, and we know that. There are frontage road developments that will happen in these areas that are required to have frontage roads. We know those oftentimes present impediments that sure in a perfect world are walkable, but from the standpoint of this are things that that probably at this time don't present themselves well from a pedestrian standpoint. But we see that differently in this area. You have significant student development here. We have a gas station who's building a sidewalk here. And he's already talked about the fact that a lot of students walk back and forth from their apartments over here to his gas station. There's a church here. There's other types of developments that are happening in this area. So for those reasons, we have a well-defined planned area that I present as part of the amendment to the ordinance. I do want to stress that nothing changes within the purple area. It's just how we handle sidewalk development in the areas in the city of limits that are not in the purple area. In those cases, you will not have to provide sidewalks unless it is a subdivision of land. In that case, you have to provide internal systems. And you don't have to provide external connections unless there's an adjacent sidewalk. I rest my case.
Further comments from the members of the board? Questions or comments? Any further questions? Alderman Sister.
I've spoken to Alderman Dumas about this several times, but just for a matter of public record, one of the concerns I have, since a large area in my ward is being exempted, is that those streets where people are already currently walking are included in this in this development area and would have sidewalks as development naturally occurs there. One of those is Industrial Park Road, and would you sort of speak to that? It really serves as a connection from a lot of the apartment complexes in Lynn Lane over to Highway 12, so you get a lot of people walking.
Right, and I'll try to show it on this map, but let me get my bearings here. I do know that this is Industrial Park Road, and so Industrial Park leaves 12 and goes all the way down to Old 25. This is Sproul Industrial Road here.
Right.
And so the one reason, and the primary reason we included everything on the east side of Industrial Park Road was to get that Medicaid and Ability Works office. But also, we have a long-term plan for a significant pedestrian system along Lynn Lane over to Academy and our South Montgomery back into the campus. And so it makes sense for all that to be included. Obviously, it does. What happens in these areas, though, is you get very sparse, and obviously, and a ton of this is in the floodplain and in a swamp area that will not have development through it. And so it made really no sense of going south at this point to get further. The same thing here. You cross a significant swamp and wetland area here that we know would be significantly difficult to cross. And so we stopped it at the logical point of Emerson School because we do want there to be connections back up 25.
Is part of our Safe Routes to School plan, is Emerson included in?
There's some discussion now of whether or not Emerson qualifies because of the guidelines of safe routes being focused on K to 6.
Okay.
Emerson is not.
Pre-K.
It's pre-K and family-centered studies.
Further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll move to the citizen comment portion of our public hearing. And in keeping with standard practice, we will alternate hearing from those for the proposed amendment and those against the proposed amendment. Each speaker will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak, and each side collectively will have a maximum of 15 minutes to speak. We will go through the exercise of hearing from someone for and someone against until either each side has exhausted its total allotment of 15 minutes or there is no one else wishing to speak. Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed sidewalk ordinance amendment?
Yes, I just have a few questions for Alderman Dumas. And he mentioned about students, but he said nothing about Sand Hill nor Corner Heights. Where that fit in?
You got to help me out there. We focused on the public
25.
school system.
Well, you're talking about the sidewalks, right?
Right, and connecting to school into school facilities.
Right, but I'm just saying, if you drive down 25, y'all see people walking from Sand Hill and Connor Heights.
Are these areas here?
No, off to the right.
These
Come
areas?
up a little.
They're included in the,
They're
In
in
here?
the purple.
Yeah, they're included.
They're-
Okay.
Anything between Emerson up to Academy is
Okay,
included.
no, it's just that you mentioned student, you didn't mention nothing about, taxpayers.
Right. Well, I'm sorry. I was saying.
Big time taxpayers.
Well, schools were a primary driver of where we place these.
And that's why you'd be amazed at the amount of school-age kids in those two subjects.
Oh, I can imagine. Yes, sir.
And Mr. Taylor, I
Sorry
have
about
to
that.
say, I am so excited about the sidewalk that's being installed with the Louisville Street project that's going on.
Oh, yeah.
I see lots of people walking there, and I
Okay.
expect it to be heavily used.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone wishing to speak against?
My name is Alvin Tom Ward 7. And I had some concerns at sidewalk meeting, but simply have two lawyers here are the areas that been excluded from sidewalk. If someone get hit running or whatever, or who will be liable if a run or someone get hit on those streets that excluded from the area. Simply have two lawyers here.
You want to speak?
Sure. I can try that, Mr. Turner. The general rule is that the city must take reasonable steps and reasonable care to make their streets and right-of-ways reasonably safe to one exercising due care. Now, there's a lot of reasonableness in that rule, but that's the standard. And so certainly, if sidewalks are there, the city has a stronger argument that it's going to be a little bit safer. But so long as the street and right-of-way as it is can be argued to be reasonably safe, the city would have a strong position.
Do we have anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor?
Charles Henderson, Ward 1. It's a little confusing to me why it's taken this board a year to figure out that we need to exclude exactly what my alderman asked you to do down there in that industrial park area down in there. You're coming back and doing exactly what he proposed when the ordinance was passed and presented a year ago. Rudy Johnson wanted to build down there. He was not able to build because he had to have sidewalks on there. Now you're coming back and excluding it so he can go ahead and build those. This should have been done when the ordinance was passed a year ago. So I think you need to go back and look and see, why are you doing that? Also, I was talking to a person on Stark Road today who's wanting to add to his parking lot. He's told he's having to put a sidewalk. The sidewalk's not going to go anywhere. And of course, we've already had another business who didn't build because he had to build sidewalks. So it looks to me like Stark Road should be excluded from it too because they don't go anywhere. So anyway, these are things you need to look at when you're amending these things. Thank you.
Do we have anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment?
Good evening, my name is Dave Garraway, I'm in Ward 3. You have to forgive me because I haven't actually reviewed this plan. I was wondering how this plan speaks to crosswalks at traffic interchanges. I tend to ride my bike around town and I'm not heavy enough yet to set off the sensors at a lot of stoplights. So I sit and wait for a car to come by to trigger it. Does this plan, as it relates to sidewalks, make allowances to put in manual activations for those traffic signals?
It doesn't address that issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone wishing to speak on the proposed?
Hi, I'm Judy Rittner. I live on Green Street. I'm relatively new to town. I'm not sure what ward I'm in, but one of the things I would say is my husband and I moved from Timber Cove to Green Street just this past year, and one of the reasons why we did it was that we both teach at university, and we wanted to walk to campus. And one of the things we found is that there are not sidewalks really to get from our house on Green Street to campus. So if there is anything that, if this ordinance supports this, we are totally in favor of it, and we'd be willing to help you work on it if you'd like. Because again, it's dangerous to be out walking in the street. People are on cell phones as they're driving. They're not necessarily paying attention. And so the more Starkville can do to be friendly to walkers, I think the better off we'll all be. So I would encourage us to think about the future and think about people walking around. We have lots of nice weather here. Think about the positive, think about the future.
Where you live on Green Street?
410 Green Street?
That's across the street from Old Street.
Yes.
That'd be in 7.
I'm your alderman.
Oh, yeah, okay, well, that's good to know. So, we're Ward 7, good to know. But thank you very
Ward
much.
I'll be thinking about you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no one, we'll move back into final comments from the members of the board. Any final comments from the members of the board? Any final comments? Seeing none, that will conclude the first public hearing on the proposed amendment to the sidewalk ordinance. And that will take us to the first public hearing on amending the City of Starkville Safety Helmet Ordinance, 2010-06. Alderman Corey, would you like to introduce?
Oh, sure. And first, let me apologize to the members of the board. I provided a copy of an amended version of this in the packet, but I put an extra copy on the table that provided strike-throughs of the actual changes, which I know is typically our custom. I brought this up at the last meeting, wanted to discuss it because I had had some complaints from both residents and business owners that they had noticed a change in behavior as a result of our existing ordinance because of the strict enforcement of it, and that change in behavior they noticed for some people tended to result in people not riding, a reduced amount of cyclists, and just some other issues related around the enforcement of the ordinance. So I thought it would be good to come back and go ahead and re-review it, since this was fairly new for us and the state of Mississippi when we introduced it. So my proposed changes was to change the requirement to adolescents, so as defined in the ordinance as being under the age of 16, because I do still have that concern. I do have health concerns about it, and I do think everyone should wear a helmet regardless. I know I do. So that's the only actual change to the ordinance, is a change from requiring it for everyone to strictly adolescents. That said, I have had a chance to talk to a couple of people since the last meeting in this one, and one of the things that was recommended, and it was mentioned at the last meeting, was having our transportation committee look at it. So I'm certainly willing and to consider letting us go ahead and have them look at it before we have our second public hearing on this item, so that they can also provide input, and if there is another method that they would like to have us look at, I'm certainly willing to at least consider that. So it's the only comments that I have.
Any questions or comments for Alderman Corey? Alderman Carter.
I'd say I would support this. I was against it originally. I kind of feel like I don't have the, I guess I have the right on this side of the table, but one day I'll be on that side of the table. I just feel like I didn't have the right to tell Alderman Corey to have to wear a helmet even if he doesn't want to. But if you were if you were willing to change it to 16 and under, that was my original recommendation. I think I'd fully support it. I think that until 16 or 17 years old, that somebody's still in the learning phase of riding a bike and maybe not knowing, since they haven't driven a car, knowing the rules of the road and knowing the fact that they should operate that bicycle as you would a vehicle. But if this was something you'd be willing to change, and then the transportation committee was okay with it, I think I'd be okay with it also.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Parker.
I would agree with Alderman Carver in that, and I initially voted against the helmet ordinance just from the standpoint of I didn't think you should require, as a parent, I'm responsible for my children, and I make sure they have helmets on. So I would support this as 16 and under. I do think, we are, I would agree, let the Transportation Committee look at it, review it. Ultimately, we are the elected officials that need to decide this, so whatever their recommendation is, I'd listen to their recommendation, but, I would support this motion or support this change of this ordinance being 16 or under. Now, I've also had some other questions about, there's really nothing, and I don't know that I want to add this, I just would like to have it open for discussion, but I've had some comments from people that are concerned about people walking and riding bikes after dark, having nothing reflective on and creating a hazard. So it's just something, I'm not prepared to add that. I would just like to bring it up for discussion amongst the board and during the next public hearing.
Further questions, Alderman Sistrunk.
I find myself in the other position. I originally voted against this ordinance, and I now find myself with the proposed amendment, and I'm certainly subject to change my opinion as I hear public comments, but I find myself in the position of not really endorsing the amendment as proposed for the very same reasons that I voted against the ordinance initially. I think that this will be very difficult to enforce and for all practical purposes impossible to enforce. Certainly as I age, and perhaps our police officers don't have this problem yet, but as I age, guessing somebody else's age becomes more and more difficult. So identifying somebody who is 16 and under would be a challenge at best for me if it was somebody in a probably 5 years either side of the 16 number. So.
Alderman Carver.
I would think that if there were any age that you were going to have to try to guess or try to provide verification as a police officer, I would think 16 would be probably the easiest age, just for the fact that's typically in the state of Mississippi when somebody gets issued their first either license or some form of identification. But I would think that if you were going to pick an age, and I know age is hard to guess sometimes, but that would be one that typical practice is once you leave the house, whether you're biking or riding or walking, you usually take your wallet, and your wallet's usually got your license in it. So again, I would support this. I think whoever thought of that number and that age was thinking outside the box and using their head. So I know it is tough to guess age, but if that were one, that would be 16. I would think would be the best to have on this ordinance.
Any further questions? You got Alderman Divis.
I voted for the ordinance, and I've probably received those same phone calls that Alderman Corey has. My biggest issue with this is enforcement and how we enforce it, even in its current state. And this, no disrespect to Chief Lindley, but I'm concerned about if we take it to a 16 and under. Having kids that are 12 and 10, twins that are 6. I wonder how that would work if my kids go off and ride their bike and they're over on Crite Street and a cop pulls them over. Does he give them a ticket and a lollipop, or does he give them a ticket, or does he give them? I mean, and I make light of that, but Chief Lindley, do you have any experience of how you deal with citations of minors and adolescents? I mean, I don't know how that works. Do you?
It's person under 17 is charged with an ordinance or statute violation. If it comes under the jurisdiction of the youth court, parents have to be notified. That's pretty much the way it works right now.
And it speaks, and if I may say too, the ordinance itself does speak to that. It does place the responsibility for that on the legal guardian of the child. And it also is our current ordinance. I mean, as it is right now, the helmet law does still currently apply to all those people you mentioned, everyone under 16 and over 16. So we currently have that requirement on the books already.
Alderman Vaughn.
I'm going to say, like I said last week, I got a 5-year-old grandson. When he go to the street, he gets his helmet. I got an 11-year-old granddaughter. When she go to the streets, she gets her helmet. I'm a member of the Healthiest Hometown Committee. So in other words, we awarded $50,000 for being the Healthy Hometown Mississippi. So now we done taken the money and we want to run with it. and we want to change the amendment. What that make us look like? Just think about, what do that make us look like? Really, what do that make us look like? We done taken the people's money. Now we want to change the amendment. We want to change the whole ball game now. Want to play a new ball game after we done taken their money for being the healthy hometown in Mississippi. You can't control your children? You can't control your children? Why? I don't, you know. If these kids got simple enough to put a helmet on, what's wrong with the rest of them? It's the way you train your child. You train up a child the way it should go. That's what you do. But my thing, we're taking these people's money, now we're finna run with it. We want to change the whole scope of the ball game. That's not fair. That don't make us look like nothing. That's why people question us, are we qualified and we capable to be up here making a decision for the city?
Any further questions or comments? Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, let me make sure I understand the gentleman from Ford correctly. Gentlemen, you're basically proposing one amendment that if someone does not want to wear a helmet, he or she does not have to do so, right?
That is correct.
Mr. Mayor, I asked that question just to make sure I clearly understood that. I'll start my comments off with this. With regard to the seatbelt law, there may be some people who may not want to wear the seatbelts, but it is a safety measure. Seatbelts save lives. The local law enforcement are charged with the duty and responsibility to enforce the law if they do not observe individuals wearing the seatbelts. Safety is always a good tool. Safety is a good mechanism. It promotes the health, safety, and welfare of all individuals that are on the roadways. It protects other motorists who are traveling the roadways. It is my opinion that it would be a step backwards for this governing body to amend the helmet ordinance. I have seen signs throughout the city that put these motorists on notice that they're required to wear helmets. In all due respect to the gentleman from Ford, it was said at a previous meeting that that there has been some strict enforcement of this particular ordinance. On the other hand, as I said previously, that's what the police department and law enforcement is for. There is strict enforcement of ordinances all the time in throughout the city. There is strict enforcement of laws in the city, but that's the law. I think it is a bad governing move to look at amending an ordinance because of strict enforcement. Strict enforcement, in instances, provide for good enforcement. It just makes sure that people are safe. I just think that it would not be a prudent and a conservative and a safe move for us to disturb this ordinance in any aspect. That's just like if I'm a member of the legislature. I go to Jackson and down there and I offer an amendment to the seatbelt law that, well, you wear the seatbelt if you choose it. Do you think that'll pass? No, it won't pass. The governor won't sign it. It won't pass the House, won't pass the Senate, in my opinion. So, we have to be mindful of these things. And I want to commend the gentleman, for bringing what he thinks is good. But when you look at the totality of the facts and the circumstances, I don't think that anyone can offer any evidence that this amendment is in the best interest of this city. How can it be? How can removing safety be in the best interest? How can not requiring someone to wear a helmet be in the best interest? What evidence, if any, can you offer to say that wearing a helmet is not a good safety measure? I mean, lives have been saved with seat belts and other, imagine a motorcycle rider going down Highway 45 here going to Tupelo or to any of these cities driving, without a helmet, having an accident. What happens? What happens when cyclists ride our city streets without a helmet? We need to be very careful. I'm not even in favor of sending this ordinance to the Transportation Committee. No, I'm just gonna be, and no disrespect to anybody, I think we just need to kill it on its face. No disrespect to anybody. I mean, I want to be as respectful as I can. This is just my governing, my comments I want to offer. I think it's just not in the best interest of the community. Why would you want to not require everyone who is on this, as the ordinance now requires, to wear a helmet? What's wrong with that? If they don't want to get a ticket by Chief Lynn and his staff, stay off the road. The DUI drivers, they're going to have roadblocks. You all know that. They're going to have roadblocks. So if you don't want to get a ticket and you want to drink, what you need to do? You need to stay at home. You get your designated driver. What happens when you go out there and run a stop sign? You want Chief Lynn to say, well, we're not going to enforce this today because we don't. Can we have an ordinance that says, you can run a stop sign if you choose, or imagine this, well, if you decide not to wear something, or if you want to comply with an ordinance, if you so chooses. I mean, our country is just built around laws that provides for the safety, and that's what we need to keep in mind here. And I'm just, and like I said, no disrespect to the gentleman, and he's done a great job here on the board, but I just want to say that we got to keep safety first for our citizens. And since we're talking about the merits, what we need to do is we just need to defeat this measure on the face. If there's a motion, we'll need to send it to no committee, but I don't want to see what the transportation maker, they may send it back for a recommendation. Then we may think we got to be bound by it. Of course, I won't be bound by it, but we don't need to send it to no committee. We are charged as the elected officials with the authority to make these tough decisions. Just like we have the smoking ordinance. There was a lot of concern when we took the lead as the first municipality in the city of the state in the state of Mississippi. Well, we're going to lose business. We're going to go out to go into other towns. That's going to affect our business. It's going to affect growth. It's going to affect economic development. But we are a model city. There are other municipalities in our city that is following the lead of our great city. Because we took the initiative, we took the foresight, we took the leadership. And that ordinance has been unamended. And it needs to stay unamended. The same as this helmet ordinance. But in closing, let me say, in all due respect to the gentleman who's the author of this ordinance, we do not need to have any amendments to it. We need to leave it alone. We need to enforce it. We've gotten a grant based on the way it stands. We need to show respect to the people who have looked upon us very favorably for having the foresight, the leadership and initiative to have this ordinance. And we want to shine in the eyes of those people and also in the eyes of our citizens. So let's not disturb this ordinance. Let's be mindful that this is all about safety and the health and welfare. If we keep that in mind, then we need to defeat any amendment. And let's not send this to no committee, because they're composed and of elected, appointed officials. And let's keep the responsibility right where it remains with us for elected officials, because we are the ones who are ultimately and solely accountable to all of the residents of this city. And Mr. Mayor, with those things said, I'm going to yield the floor.
Are there any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? All right, seeing none, we'll move to our citizen comment portion of the public hearing. And I'll spare y'all all of the explanation again. We'll do this public hearing exactly the same way we did the previous one. Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment?
My name is Brent Crocker. I work for the university. I'm also an EMT, and I do think that this needs to be changed. I was originally on the Healthy Hometown Committee. I don't think that a contest is the right reason to create an ordinance. Some kind of a contest to win us notoriety or money was not the right way. I think we rushed into it. I think it's the wrong reason. And to say that, well, we won the money or we won the award and now we need to keep it that way, is that despite the will of the people of Starkville? Is that to go against really what we want because we won an award and we don't want to say, well, maybe it was a mistake? I understand the safety side of it. But if we're going to say we're going to do this in the name of safety, then where do we stop? It's my responsibility to take care of myself and my daughter. It's not for the city to say that I can't do things that only impact me. If I do or don't wear a helmet, that's my decision. It shouldn't be the city's decision to say, you know, you're going to do this even though it's not going to affect anybody else. You mentioned running stop signs, drunk driving. Those are things that will affect other people, not just me, but other people. If you're going to say that in the name of safety we're going to do this, then where does it stop? Are you now going to say that we're going to have reflectors and lights on the front and back, so now you have to pay for that and you have to put that on there? What about elbow pads and knee pads? I like to jog. Are you going to say that I can't wear headphones when I jog? Where are you going to draw the line? And so if we just keep doing this where, hey, in the name of safety, we shouldn't have driven here tonight. Because, hey, if we say, you know, helmets, if it saves just one life, well, let's get rid of automobiles. Let's get rid of a lot of things. I think that we have to expect personal responsibility from people. I do know of people who don't ride their bikes to campus because of the ordinance, and I think that's a shame. You know, they have their reasons, but it's the ordinance, and so they're not going to do it. So I do ask that we consider this. You know, I don't know exactly what the compromise would be, but I do think that it's causing more harm than good. I've seen people who have their helmets on. I saw a guy riding with his helmet on, it was backwards. You know, I saw people riding, they don't have the straps on. The helmet looks like it was from the 50s. We've done really no education about wearing helmets and why, or how to take care and use a good helmet, and so we don't know if the helmet's even effective anymore. So I think that we should focus on education, and we should focus on having people take personal responsibility. My daughter will wear a helmet whenever she rides because I told her to. I don't need a law that says that she has to. I generally wear a helmet when I ride, but that's my decision. That shouldn't be your decision. If you want to wear a helmet when you ride, that's up to you. I don't want to be the one to tell you yes or no. And so I don't want to be breaking the law if I'm going to ride to my neighbor's house and I don't put a helmet on. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment?
No, I'm for. Because reason being, same reason, I ride my bike and I hate the helmet. And I hate it when you made an ordinance to tell me what I can wear and what I can't wear, and I'm a grown man. And it's just like your sidewalk ordinance, you amended that, you need to amend this one.
All right, is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment?
Good evening, my name is Alvin, Ward 7. I'm a member of the Transportation Committee. But do we really respect our police officers? We give them one thing to do, and then we turn around and change it. But then if someone get killed or hurt, I'm sorry, that's not gonna help nobody. And you're really not fair to the police officers. They're out there trying to make it safe for the pedestrians like me, the people that ride bike, and the people that drive cars. I see people ease on the light, run the light, hoping that the police don't see them. Now, we have laws, we need to stick to laws, because if you don't, people will wind up hating the government body or whatever that make laws and don't stick to it.
Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Austin Check. I live at 106 Raymond Street. I have been in Starkville since '09. I've also, I'm an EMT like this gentleman here. I've been in public safety for 10 years now. I have never worked a bicycle accident. The closest I've ever come to is a child that had their foot stuck between the legs of one. I've asked my colleagues, have they worked one? Their answer is no. I believe you should wear a helmet. It's a smart thing to do. Enforcing a law for one, I don't know about that. Has the board ever been presented actual numbers on how many of these instances actually occurred before the incident? What were those numbers?
They were very low.
And is there an actual?
Maybe one per year.
I tried to call today. I picked the one day of the year that the state EMS network was down to be able to pull those statistics. So I plan on bringing them to the next meeting. The problem I do see is, admittedly, the police department is understaffed right now. 10 to 20% roughly. Is that correct?
Yeah, trying to build back.
Trying to build back. And it's all about allocation of resources. My house has had stuff stolen 3 times in the last 6 months. And the reason I hear that we're not able to get around these neighborhoods is because of understaffing. So it does nothing but absolutely burn my rear end, come off campus, and see 2 patrol cars picking folks off and not wearing a helmet. No disrespect to your officers enforcing law, that's your job. But my thought is if we're in these tougher times, and I fully agree with this gentleman about passing ordinances to win a contest. That is not the point of legislature whatsoever. Perhaps this is a great way to take the burden off the police department and put them back on the streets, away from these areas that don't have such high crime but are very valuable for picking people off that aren't wearing helmets. I'm not, once again, advocating that people shouldn't wear helmets. Personally, I think it's a smart road to go, but I think we can do better things with our assets and our time. Thank you.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment?
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Alderman. My name is Ron Cosman, and I live in Ward 3. And I'm here tonight as primarily not only a resident, but also a health researcher in the community. I'm not representing any particular organization. And I have for distribution a modest proposal as to how we might address this. Basically, what I'm suggesting is that we do a year 1 report, because we passed this ordinance in time for this past academic year. So it's now been in effect while all the students are at Mississippi State University. And so what I'm suggesting, because I am a health researcher, that we actually pull together some of the information and the statistics about how well this ordinance has worked in terms of how many accidents have there been. For example, if of all the accidents involving non-motorized vehicles, because this is not just a bicycle helmet ordinance, if all the accidents occurred in town and more than half were age 16 and above, then that might change the nature of the debate that we're having. If it turns out that more than half of the people who have been cited under this ordinance actually show up to court with a helmet, that's different than if more than half are showing up and they do not have possession of a helmet because they cannot afford it or not have access to it. So what I'm suggesting is, and I ask the indulgence of Alderman Perkins, I'd like to suggest that we send it to the Transportation Committee for purposes of data collection, working with both the Healthy Starkville Committee, the Department of Health Promotion on MSU's campus, and also the Starkville in Motion, to pull together exactly what's happened over the past year as we've begun to enforce this, and who are the affected populations, what's been the impact, have we perhaps even prevented some traumatic brain injuries as a result of having this ordinance in effect. So I would throw that out as a possibility instead of going to the next meeting, public hearing on this, on amending this ordinance. Let's get some facts and bring it back to the board. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment?
Board and Mayor Alderman, I would just like to say, I'm thinking what these young men is thinking down here on the end, and I'm looking at what y'all are saying. You know, I'm looking at both parties and seeing what they're saying. But I'm like, well, I can't make nobody wear it. I can't make you wear a seatbelt. But if you don't wear the seatbelt, what you gonna do? You're gonna get caught and you're gonna get ticketed. They say seatbelt saves life. Well, first of all, God saves life. We know that. But second of all, I would just like to say, if you would like to entrust all the students out of Mississippi State, this is all we hear. We're talking about the residents here in Starkville. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about residents here in Starkville because they're out there and they're gonna ride for 5 years or whatever and they're going home. We're here in Starkville, Mississippi. Let's try to see what's good for our city. Getting your head bumped, that's like life. You just there sometimes, you're a veteran. And we know this. We know what can happen, regardless of what the statistics say, what the statistics don't say. Next year they're gonna say something else. So I'm fully with these gentlemen down here. Thank you.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment?
Before I start, I just want to ask whether I can speak. I'm just a student, so I'm not a resident.
You can speak.
Okay. So I'm an international student actually, and I just want to you to consider your that all this has an effect on international students as well. And as you know, most states in Europe don't actually require helmet wearing, and it's because everybody cycles. And I just think so that international students can actually live in Starkville, I think the current ordinance is actually a hindrance. And I mean, for me, I have to say, recently for just 2 days, I didn't have a helmet and I was picked up in those 2 days. I usually wear one, and it's just, should I not use my bike until I can get to a cheap shop to get a helmet just because of this ordinance? So I just think that for the good of the connection with the university, I would urge you to revise the ordinance as you suggested. And I just think you have to consider your connection with the university here. Thank you.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment?
First, Alderman Corey, I certainly understand the phone calls that you've received. I've had a couple of my friends who have expressed the same sentiments to me, and in that light, I'm going to absolutely betray them tonight with my comments to the board. This is a tough one for me because I consider myself to be a social libertarian. Mostly, if what you're doing is not hurting me, I don't really care what you're doing. Privacy of your own home is your own business. But I think there's some pretty interesting information, and you can look back from the start of the meeting tonight to understand why the ordinance should stay as written. You can look back to the consent agenda, where we've shown that despite the best efforts of our public works, who do a wonderful job, we don't have the funding, as Alderman Sistrunk pointed out, to really, these fund balances are decreasing. And we're not getting our roads paved, which is why we have the discussion about Kreitz tonight. Kreitz is a deplorable road. So we're not keeping our roads in great condition. You can look at the public comments tonight during the public announcements. And we asked for more police protection to keep speeders from riding down our roads, people distracted by loud music riding down our roads. So we've shown that we have inattentive drivers, and we have road conditions that are not well kept. By just a point of example here, I can ride down a hill in this town and hit 30 miles an hour. It's faster than some speed limits in this town. So the idea that bikers are going slow is sort of a misnomer, and we do need to have decent road conditions. We can't guarantee that. So we have this issue here of non-optimum conditions for riding. And this was a tough one for me because I believe that I should be able to make a decision as to what I want to do with my life. But I also believe that those personal rights end where matters of public health and safety are involved. And seeing as how the county hospital here is not 100% self-funded, that they take some of my tax money to fund the hospital, people who go to the hospital with a head injury, I'm helping pay for. So now it's become my business in a very roundabout way. But I don't want you to be dissuaded by logical fallacy arguments. The argument tonight that because we've historically not shown very many head injuries sustained by people not wearing bicycle helmets, that we won't have them in the future is a logical fallacy. That history does not show the future because it doesn't take into account that 40 years ago there were fewer cars on the road, that this was a smaller town. And as we continue to grow and as we continue to congest our roadways, you have more incidents, potential incidents that could occur. The other logical fallacy is the fallacy of the slippery slope argument, that where do we stop? You know, once we start mandating safety, where do we stop? But you can take that argument and flip it around. Using that argument, we should eliminate sign ordinances. Using that argument, we should eliminate zoning ordinances, because what I do with my property should be my business. So the city, and staying with state and federal government, is already in the business of having to decide where that line is. That line shouldn't scare us. As individuals, as board members elected by the citizens of Starkville, it is your job. We place it in your hands to decide where that line is. I feel that you made the right choice. You found the line a year ago, and there's no reason to stay away from that line. Let's hold that line. Let's keep this amendment, let's keep this ordinance as written, and let's fail this amendment. Thank you.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor?
Mayor, I'd like to just clarify a couple of things. There's a lot of rhetoric tonight about strict enforcement and picking students off at the bridge. It's real easy not to get a ticket for being in violation of helmet ordinance. Wear a helmet. It's just that simple. There's no gray area. If you ride a bicycle, the way the ordinance stands now, you've either got a helmet on or you don't. This is a legislative decision, not an executive decision. We will enforce whatever y'all pass and instruct us to enforce. But the way it stands right now, if you ride a bicycle in the city of Starkville, Mississippi, you better have a helmet on. And just because it's a pretty day and 60 degrees and everybody wants to ride their bicycle and they don't want to comply with the ordinance, I'm sorry. We can't have bicycle helmet light. We either have it or we don't. We need direction from y'all. Thank you.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance?
This was actually why I came tonight. I'm Judy Ridner. I now know that I'm in Ward 7. So I'm also a cyclist. My husband's a cyclist. I've witnessed 5 bicycle accidents in the last year, one of them last night. And in fact, 3 of the 5 are never reported because you never go to the hospital. You fall down, you get all scraped up, you take care of yourself, and you go home. 2 of the 5 accidents, though, involve people hitting their heads, both women. If they did not have a helmet on, they would have had a major head injury. Both of them suffered minor concussions as a result. I think, as Alderman Perkins said, this is a health and safety issue. And one of the responsibilities of local government is to provide for the health, safety, and public welfare of the people who live in their city. And it seems to me that the 2 things we're discussing tonight are going in opposite directions. On one level, we've got this what seems to me, progressive ordinance about sidewalks that's aiming to make this city more livable by making it more walkable. But by the same token, going away from a helmet law is making this place a less bicycle-friendly place, and therefore it is a more regressive action. If you want a progressive city, you have to provide for the health, welfare, and safety of the people who live there. And yes, Europe, they may indeed they may not ride with helmets all the time. Well, as the man said, that's because they're all riding bicycles. They're not driving cars. I would also say, as a cyclist, and I would challenge all of you to do this one day, just sit at a traffic light or stand on a street for a while and start to take note of how many people are driving while they are on the cell phone. And you'll see, it's about 30 to 40% of the people who go by. People are not paying attention while they're in the car. I have been almost run over so many times since I've lived here. It's dangerous. And so yes, most of us will make the choice to wear a helmet, even though it is a pain in the neck. But you do so knowing that even if you're just out for that little tiny ride around the block, or to go to the grocery store, you still might fall over, or you still might get hit by a car and be injured, and potentially injured very seriously. So it seems to me that this is a no-brainer. We have to hold the law as it is. Perhaps the thing to do is what Ron said, gather more evidence, but certainly we need to know more before this is changed. It seems to me it is in the best interest of the city to hold tight on this.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment?
Georgia Murphy, Ward 3. I was so excited this morning when I read the paper because I thought common sense has kicked in, yay, in two areas. But as far as the bicycle ordinance is concerned, the examples that you gave, Alderman Perkins, were to protect everybody. I mean, if somebody runs a stop sign, they're going to hit me, and all the smoking and the drinking, all that protects lots of people. But the bicycle helmet protects me. I'm responsible for me, and I appreciate your concern. I appreciate the seatbelt law. I wear the seatbelt not because I want to, but because I don't want to be ticketed. But I'm responsible for me. I'm responsible. Nobody else is. So I do think that the amendment is a good idea.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance amendment? Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed ordinance amendment? Is there anyone wishing to speak on the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no one, that will conclude the public comment portion of this, our first public hearing on the proposed amendment to the sidewalk ordinance.
I want to make a correction. This Health at Hometown Committee wasn't about winning an award. It wasn't about just the bicycle helmet. It was about the whole city of Starkville. So I don't want you all just thinking that it was just about the bicycle helmet. It was for the whole city of Starkville. The healthy things that we did to make Starkville a healthy place. It wasn't just about the bicycle helmet. So that award didn't just come from there.
Further comments from the members of the board?
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Perkins.
once you rest this matter, could we break? We've been sitting here about 2 hours.
Yes, we can. Now, Alderman Corey, before we leave the matter, you indicated that you weren't sure which direction you wanted to take this. Do you want it calendared for another public hearing? Would you like it referred? How would you like it to be handled from here?
We do need to have, of course, a second public hearing. I would like, as a courtesy to the Transportation Committee, to let them review this first. Would it be possible to put it on the agenda for the first meeting in June? That way they would have the month of May to actually meet and go over the issue and come back with some recommendations at the first meeting in June.
You could
Could possibly be the second meeting in June. I think the Transportation Committee meets, I'm not sure if, I know that at least one or two of the people that are on the committee are out of town a good bit in the next few weeks, so if that doesn't matter to you.
I'm amenable to that, but I do want to put a date for the second public hearing because I don't want to let this linger for too long.
Okay. Would you like to calendar the second public hearing? That'd be Tuesday, June 19th.
I would like to do so, and I would do so in the form of a motion.
All right, Alderman Corey has made a motion to set a second public hearing on the proposed amendment for the bicycle helmet ordinance for July 19th. June 19th, and to refer the matter to the Transportation Committee. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. And without objection, I'm going to move us into a brief recess. Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, we'll stand in recess. Mr. Perkins, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This meeting of the Board of Alderman will now come back to order. The matter before you now is consideration and approving a revised job description for the city clerk and authorizing advertisement for a city clerk for the city of Starkville. Alderman Sistrunk.
Again, I'm going to reiterate that we're very sorry to be losing Ms. Outlaw. We'll miss her for many reasons, and she's probably getting tired of hearing that and doesn't believe us anymore. But I would like to say that for those that don't know, and I'm now speaking pretty much to the department heads, so y'all know, but city clerk, or more properly municipal clerk, is a position that's defined by statute, and it's rather broadly defined by statute. It includes duties from bookkeeper to registrar of voters to custodian of the official seal. It's a very broadly defined position. With Ms. Outlaw leaving us, we're in a position where we can review what our current needs and expectations for a more modern city clerk position would be. And I think Ms. Outlaw touched on this when she was looking at her reorganization that we voted on at our last meeting. And I think the job description before us tonight touches on that to some extent. What I'm finding as I look around is that cities are more and more going to a finance department that houses the city clerk functions, but there is more and more an emphasis on finance as opposed to some of these statutorily defined duties. This process tonight feels a little rushed. We've just learned that Ms. Outlaw's going to be leaving us. We have a job description that was put together pretty quickly and had minimal time to review and comment on before it found its way into the e-packet. I think it's far more important that we get this right than we get it done quickly. So I'm going to ask two things tonight. I'm going to ask that we table this current job description and any action on it tonight. And then I'm going to ask that the board direct our chief administrative officer to come back to us at our next board meeting with an analysis of the advantages and disadvantages of having a finance department that holds the city clerk functions.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion, I believe.
So the motion is to table the current agenda matter and to task the chief administrative officer with researching and reporting on common organization structures for financial functions within the city clerk's office.
More specifically, the advantages and disadvantages of creating a finance department.
The advantages and disadvantages of creating a finance department.
And how the city clerk functions fit into that department.
Ms. Brule, do you have the task? Okay. All right. So would be to table, to task the chief administrative officer with reporting on advantages and disadvantages of having a finance department. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Sistrunk, you wish to speak on the matter?
I think I have.
Discussion, Alderman Carver.
I guess my question is leading to the statutory mandated responsibility of the city clerk, and if you're gonna, are you talking about outsourcing or not outsourcing?
I am not talking about outsourcing anything.
No,
If I
I'm
can
asking-
just.
Let me finish my question, but
Certainly.
anyway.
All right,
Question,
city.
I want to, with the direction of that leading into, my question is, with that, tell us, what job responsibilities would be different if there were a finance department within the city
Yes.
clerk's department?
Yes, I would
Okay.
expect that to be part of the report.
All right, and the city attorney has tapped me and correctly informed me that we have a motion to table. I've actually kind of, I guess, allowed a hybrid motion, and our rules are less clear because motion to table is not debatable, but we have another part of the motion that probably would be debatable. He's interpreting that, and I think it's a good interpretation. It's not debatable because it's the thrust of the motion is the motion to table, and we're reading you right on that.
Yes.
So we're going to vote.
Okay.
All those in favor of Alderman Sistrunk's motion, please signify by raising your hand. Oh, there was no need for that. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 7 in favor with 0 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval of City of Starkville claims docket for the fire department.
No, wait, just a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sit down.
Report on Highway 182. Mr. Kemp?
Ms. Sproul have been tasked with that, Ms. Mayor.
Oh, excuse me.
Come on down with them, both of y'all.
You may both want to come because I think Mr. Kemp's the one that was in direct contact.
Come on down.
Ms. Brule?
Yes, Alderman Perkins at the last meeting asked me to report on the status of 182 and when we could expect that it would be either overlaid or resurfaced, or not resurfaced, what am I looking for? So what I'm looking for, milled and overlay. That was reconstruct. Thank you. Reconstructed is the better term. And I contacted Commissioner Taggart, and he took a little bit to get back to me, which is, I'm sure he's quite busy. In the interim, Edward got in touch with our contact with MDOT, Mr. Jameson. And Mr. Jameson was kind enough to send an email, which was included in your packet. And basically, he said that they had planned to overlay 182 this summer, but there was a shortfall of state money, which we certainly understand, and they were going to use federal money on the overlay. Unfortunately, federal money requires that all encroachments be moved prior to the expenditure of the federal funds, and those encroachments were quite numerous, and so that delayed the project. So they're now in the process of trying to determine within the next 2 years that they'd be able to have enough state funds to do the project. I did get an email from Commissioner Taggart, and he said basically that he could not attend tonight. He's out of pocket for a few days with his family, and that they had met, he and Mr. Wampler and Mr. Jameson had met with Mayor Wiseman and Mr. Kemp and Mr. Dumas several weeks ago to discuss it, and that they had committed to overlay the road this year with some federal resources, but ran into some problems, which were the encroachments that I mentioned, and that he's now looking elsewhere for funding. So, and he encouraged us to call if we had any further questions from him. So that's the status from my perspective.
Questions or comments from Ms. Brewer? Alderman Ball.
Mr. Kemp, at those red lights, those intersection one I told you, the red light, the one at Stark Road, the one on 182, one right there coming up the hill. They can't do nothing about the old bad places. Those are some bad spots.
They can do what we do for maintenance as far as patching potholes and that kind of thing. They're certainly can do that, but those areas that we've looked at are in very bad condition, deteriorating fast, and it will need an overlay very soon.
Is there any way they can patch, they come patch them or something?
And I'll be happy to put those requests in again to MDOT maintenance personnel.
Alderman Dumas.
Thank you. Don't get nervous, Ed. I want to touch on some of this. 182 has been what was a significant topic when we went through our election process 3 years ago. And I want to thank Edward, and I want to thank the mayor and Commissioner Taggart, Bill, and others. We did have well, frankly, it was our second meeting, because when Commissioner Minor was still in office, he and Mr. Jameson came down and met with Edward and Parker and I, and we included some folks from the university to talk about the future of 182. And that really didn't get anywhere. Well, Alderman Parker brought it to my attention first that they were surveying 182, caught my attention, so we called a meeting just to get our heads around this. Commissioner Taggart was doing everything he could to overlay 182 as quickly as he could so that he could do what he thought was right. I had some discussions with Commissioner Taggart because I think, as we all know, there are things that I think need to happen above and beyond just a simple overlay. That road was a 2-lane concrete road. There are significant drainage issues. There are significant access issues when you look at certain blocks that have horrific parking situations. There are a lot of problems with Highway 182. And so we met, and one of the biggest issues that from the MDOT side, just to add a little bit from what they discussed, there are 38 encroachments. And just to clarify with that, when they lay their right-of-way out, there are 38 privately owned structures, they can be fences or signs or even buildings, that are within their right-of-way. And they cannot get an ounce of federal dollars until those encroachments are removed. And in some cases, they're buildings that will physically have to be removed from the right-of-way. So therefore, they can't use federal dollars. So that opens up the question of where they're discussing where they go from here and using state dollars, because they don't have that restriction on state funding. But what it brings us back to is then what do we do with it? Do we overlay it, or do we begin the conversation of how we fix these encroachments? Because frankly, a lot of these 38 are the things that we hear more than more than once are some of the significant problems of blight and unsightly features along Highway 182. And frankly, I think it's a great leverage to get some of these things removed. In addition to that, I think there's an opportunity here to where we can look at sidewalk development, we can look at curbs, we can look at a number of controlled access points. Edward has produced a map looking at our right-of-way. And from a planning side, one of the more difficult things is we vary in right-of-way width from 60 feet at Montgomery Street, and in 3 blocks we go up to 135 feet. And so what's important there, when you look at form-based code, you look at 0-foot setbacks, and you look at these ideas that we begin to develop in an urban pattern. When you look down this road, you're going to see these jagged edges of building fronts and contextual buildings and masses that are varied because of the right-of-way. And so I think there's a way, and Edward, I don't know how best to approach this, but I think now that we're having the discussion about it, that we look at what we can do to get a consistent right-of-way along the entire length of 182 from Old West Point Road, at least to Long Street. So that in those areas that have form-based form-based codes there, we can at least have a consistent build-to line, and then we can also perhaps address a lot of these encroachment issues because we would have narrowed right-of-way in which a lot of these encroachments would be there. This is a significant issue. I've heard somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 million in looking through the process of reconstructing this road. I don't think that's doable from our standpoint, unless we want to look at the ending fund, Ms. Sister. Or can we put that on next year's budget?
Sure.
Or how we begin the process of just doing what we can so that we can textually get this thing in shape as we begin to develop over the long term. I don't, under any circumstance, want to just come in, mill the top of it, overlay it, leave it the way that it is, and then in 6 months after we overlay it, we're right back to where we are right now with a significantly deteriorating road because of the situation it's in. And I know we're bound by that, and I know it's a state road. And I want to commend Commissioner Taggart again. He's doing everything he can to look at this, but we have to be steadfast in what we do as well.
Can I ask a question? Y'all know a lot more about this than I do, but any kind of overlay, if it's a routine overlay or what you're suggesting, anything you do like that, isn't it going to be just back to the original problem in 2 years or 3 years?
Probably more, or I'm not an engineer, but from what I understand, that's an old concrete road. It's 2-lane road. So it's concrete directly to shoulder, and they didn't do much. They just overlaid right on top of it. So those panels are shifting and breaking and everything up underneath there. And so I would imagine that it would go right back to the state it's in fairly quickly.
It cuts the life of the road about in half, is that right?
Right, Mayor.
So
You can see the
typically
old-
you'd expect 10, you get about 5 out of the road.
And you can see the old joints where the concrete is. If you ride down, you feel the bumps. You can see the old center line, which is basically right in the middle of the middle lane. And it's going to continue to be a problem. And MDOT's maintenance in the past has been to mill and overlay, and those joints will come back to the surface in a matter of weeks. And then continue, those joints or cracks as water starts to intrude and they start to fray away and deteriorate more over time. And, it really is a long-term maintenance problem. The best way, I know it's very expensive, is to rebuild it from the ground up, but it is almost prohibitively expensive to do that.
I guess my question is could we assist Commissioner Taggart by going to Congressman Harper? I mean, who would actually maybe have the funds to do this project? Is there any better way?
The federal funds is what they were trying to use, but the encroachments that Alderman Dumas was talking about were the impediment to that. If we could get some of those impediments removed, then perhaps it might be that the federal funds would become available.
And that was
I don't know in what quantity, but.
And that was coming through standard U.S. Department of Transportation funds. Now, just a few short years ago, it might be something that you could request an earmark for. But, of course, Congress hasn't given an earmark for anything in 2 years. typically, in this day and time, it is the agency that controls the funds.
Okay.
And I don't, you may have mentioned this, Alderman Dumas, but another advantage, or one of the benefits I see on the Louisville Street project is that we've been able to reduce the number of entry points onto Louisville Street, which makes for a much more, well, the sidewalk that's going there becomes much more continuous, and it makes it much safer as cars come and go from those parking lots, as opposed to having boundless number of entry points. So that's another part of what you're talking about
Absolutely.
with getting the right-of-way
You begin to
consistent.
control some access. And we talked about a number of things, just to put more cards out there. I mean, I suggested we look at a 2-lane road, just so that we get back to the same two-lane concrete thing. Well, that fell on deaf ears all the way around because of traffic. And I think it would probably cause a traffic issue. But I think the idea of reconstructing this road completely at this point, with MDOT, with federal funds, with city funds, with anything we have, unless somebody donates $40 million, is absolutely out of the question. And so I think we have to look at it from how we approach it. And unfortunately, we're going to be right back here in 2 years if we continue the state budget cycle of what do you do? And it's tough. $100,000 for Kreitz doesn't touch a $40 million project on 182.
Any further discussion?
I do want to, I don't know if action is needed, but I do want to, for the public record, start the process of discussing with MDOT how we begin to get a unified right-of-way and address the encroachment issues. And
I
so,
can task the city engineer with that if you
do we need a motion with that?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, well, I'd like that task, and then sometimes in the next 3 or 4 board meetings, I don't want to put a time on that, but I don't want it to get to August and we're not here. We have a report back on what the possibilities there are. And what's the proper legal term for giving back right-of-way? Reverts. And I'm sure there's a lot of legal process there that I'm unaware of that we need to know about as well, of what that process would look like.
In general, when you give back right away, it reverts to the adjoining landowners.
Is it ours to give?
Is that from us or from the state? That would be from the state.
State.
And these old roads were just simply deeds at that point, or easements. Were they easements? These old
There
roads?
should be rights of way.
No, I think some of these old roads are still shown as
Easements?
easements or deeds. So I don't know how
Well,
that
if it's a full
complicates things.
deed, then you wouldn't deal with the reverting issue, I don't think.
Do we know what the state's position is on giving back?
I don't fully know. We didn't look at that completely, but that's a process. And obviously that's a big part of this. We need to know.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll now move to request for approval of the fire department claims document. We'll give Alderman Carver a moment to exit the room. Discussion.
So moved.
Alderman Corey's made a motion to approve the city of Starkville claims document for the fire department as of April 26, 2012 as presented. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Corey, you wish to speak on the merits?
I don't.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We'll give Alderman Carver a moment to re-enter the room. And that will carry us to a request for approval to advertise the vacant position of Deputy Clerk Accounts Receivable. Alderman Sistrunk?
I would like to move approval of extending the temporary employment of LaTanya Henderson in the position of accounts receivable clerk in the city clerk's office.
And is that with benefits?
With benefits.
Alderman Sistrunk has made a motion to approve of extending the temporary employment of LaTanya Henderson in the position of Deputy Clerk Accounts Receivable in the city clerk's office to include benefits going forward. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Alderman Parker has seconded Alderman Sistrunk motion. Alderman Sistrunk, you wish to speak on the merits?
Again, I think that with the hiring of a new department head, it really is unfair of the board to hire 2 of 5 positions in that office in the month or 2 before that new department head comes on board. So I see this as a compromise that allows Ms. Outlaw in the city clerk's office to have some help. It's not ideal, but it is some help.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Sistrunk's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval to advertise and fill the vacant position of deputy clerk in the general records, deputy clerk general records in the city clerk's office. Alderman Sistrunk?
I would like to table that one and ask Ms. Outlaw to bring us something next time to evaluate just how much help you think will be needed in the 2 to 3 months as we go through the process, whether you'd like to pursue a temporary position or not.
Alderman Sistrunk has made a motion to table. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merit? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that will exhaust the open session portion of our agenda. Alderman Perkins.
Let me be clear, you made the statement that Alderman Sistrunk made a motion to table. You didn't complete what she did more than table. She asked for Ms. Outlaw to bring back a recommendation as to how we should proceed with office. In other words, when you announce the motion, you say it's to table.
Right. And I was trying to keep us out of the situation we ran into before where we had a motion that was part substantive.
And as a second issue, would you task Ms. Outlaw?
I will so task.
Okay, but just for parliamentary procedure, if you're trying to avoid and comply with the city attorney's request, you just bifurcate the motion. Just do the motion to table, which is correct, is not debatable. Then make sure you honor the will of the member of the board as to what they want to do. Then that'd be the proper way to do it. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Sistrunk, would you like to make the second part of that motion now, or would you like me to task Ms. Outlaw?
Task Ms. Outlaw.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Outlaw. Okay, got it.
All right, that exhausts the open session portion of our agenda. We have nothing remaining but executive session items. Is there a motion to move into closed session?
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to move into a closed session to determine whether there is a need for executive session. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Mr. Mayor, we got a motion to go into closed session?
We were about to vote unless you've got a discussion point on closed session.
Oh, well, I'm wondering why we went to closed session, ready to go home.
Okay.
So,
We're going to vote on whether to go into closed session, so you can make a point as to why you think we need to go home. Or?
I didn't see anything on the agenda that merits our going to closed session without enumerating items. I think we need to recess the meeting and.
We do have one item.
Well,
that needs-
the department head is not here. I'm not interested in hearing that until she can come to this meeting.
All right, any further discussion on the motion to go into closed?
I move that we table the motion to go into closed session.
All right, motion has been made to table the motion to go into closed session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. We're tabling the motion to go into closed session. That's the vote you have before you. So if the motion to go into closed session is tabled, then that discussion on that dies.
Can I ask a question about?
You can't, well, you can ask a procedural question. You cannot have a substantive debate point.
Okay, never mind.
All right, all those in favor of Alderman Perkins' motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand.
Alderman Sistrunk, how you vote on that? She voted to table.
All right, we're going to do this one more time. Alderman Sistrunk, please take your seat.
Mayor, she voted. You asked her to re-vote.
The motion that we have before us, Alderman Sistrunk, is a motion to table the motion to go into a closed session. So if you wish not to have the discussion about going into the closed session, that's what we're voting on. All those in favor of the motion to table,
what that means.
please signify by raising your hand.
What does that mean?
All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand.
Mr. Mayor, may we
All
recognize?
those
Absent.
abstaining.
Absent, I vote absent.
Are you present but voting, or are you abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
All right.
May I be
By a
recognized?
vote of 4 in favor, with 2 against, with 1 abstention, this measure passes. Alderman Perkins, you may now be
Mr. Mayor, I
recognized.
move that we stand in recess until the 15th day of May of 2012 at 5:30 PM.
Alderman Perkins has made a motion to recess until May 15th, 2012, 5:30 PM at 101 Lamb Street in City Hall courtroom. Alderman Perkins, that's your
It
motion?
is, yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Perkins, you wish to speak on the matter?
No, sir.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure passes, we stand in recess.
What you had down there, Eric?
What do we do?